when you first became aware of a problem between Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation and Dayspring Health. And I think you indicated to me that you became aware of that problem at a Greater Nassau County Chamber of Commerce meeting a few years ago.
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
One of those kind of meetings.
Right. And can you give me the gist of what was said?
Mr. Atkins told me that we had a line on his property, and I told him he needed to talk to John about it.
When you say, let's go identify people first. When you say Mr. Atkins, is this the gentleman
Yes.
to my left?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say John, is that a gentleman named John Middleton?
Yes.
Is John Middleton a officer, director, manager, supervisor?
He's CEO.
He's the CEO of Okefenokee
Okefenokee.
Rural Electric
Yes.
Membership Corporation.
Yes.
Okay. Other than telling you that he believed that there were some poles owned by Okefenokee on his property, did he indicate to you anything further about the nature of the problem or the relief that he wanted?
I promise I don't remember.
Okay. There are lots of things that I don't remember. And sometimes when I talk, something jogs my memory. So if something that we talk about jogs your memory, it's perfectly all right to say, hey, I remember. If you don't remember, that's fine. Did he indicate to you whether he had already talked to John Middleton or any other member of Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation, or whether he had any of his own employees in communication with Okefenokee?
I think he had been in contact with them.
Okay. I'm going to shift our focus just a little bit and ask you if you are aware of any written easement that would allow Okefenokee to have any poles on the property that is now owned by Dayspring Health LLC. And that could be a written agreement with Dayspring or any prior owner of that property.
I don't know.
Do you have any indication that, or do you know of any communication, whether it would be written or verbal, to Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation or any of its predecessor entities? I think it used to be a co-op. That either Dayspring or Mr. Adkins or any of the predecessors in title didn't want these poles on their property?
I'm not.
Any indication, directly or indirectly, that you're aware of to Okefenokee that these poles interfered with the owner's own use of their property?
No.
Objective form. You can answer.
Do what?
I'm just making an objection to the form to preserve it, but you can answer.
do you have any personal knowledge about whether or not Okefenokee does have any poles located on the property of Dayspring Health LLC?
No.
Have you ever been out by that property?
I've seen it.
Can you tell me in your own words how long you've lived it? Well, I'll ask you this way. How long have you lived here in Nassau County?
62 years.
Driven up and down, have you driven up and down US 1 going north from Hilliard toward Folkestone, Georgia?
Yes.
Can you tell me with what frequency you might make that drive on a weekly basis?
Not weekly.
How many times a month might you do it?
Maybe once.
Okay. Can you, up at, let's just say, starting about 2010 and looking back in time, can you tell me what the nature of that area, the land use particularly of that area was?
You can answer.
Before that,
Yeah.
motels,
All right, so there were some motels.
timber,
Pasture.
not really pasture through there,
Okay.
just wool,
Rural,
yes.
timber, few motels along US 1. Any other business or commerce that you can think of once you got past, let's just say, north of Franklin Sawmill?
Just the, well, they had that place south of where the truck stop used to be and the bar across the street.
Right, up at Malone?
They got the old horns or whatever that is up there by the river.
Right,
That was about it.
okay,
They had a motel on the river on the right, that's gone.
right. There used to be a Florida Welcome Station up there.
Welcome station, across from Dayspring.
And agricultural inspection station.
Yes,
Does that pretty much cover it on that?
as far as I'm concerned, yeah.
Okay. Since this matter became a subject of litigation, have you driven by and looked at the property?
I noticed it.
Can you tell me if you, when you drove by and noticed it, did you see anything that appeared to you where the poles that are the subject of this litigation interfered with the use of the property?
Now that I did not notice.
Okay.
I just looked at the building
Okay.
from the road.
Other than the conversation that you had with Mr. Adkins back, I think you said maybe 3 or 4 years ago at a Chamber of Commerce meeting or similar meeting, Are you aware of any other statements, either verbal or written, made by Mr. Atkins or anyone in his employment regarding the issue of these poles on their property?
I'm not.
Are you aware of any, I'm turning it around a little bit now, are you aware of any statements made by Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation or any of its officers or directors or supervisory personnel to Mr. Atkins or his employees about the problem?
Spoke to them?
Yes. Either.
No, I'm not.
How about written?
I am not.
Are you, other than this particular lawsuit regarding Dayspring Health versus Okefenokee Rural Electric, are you aware of any other lawsuits involving Okefenokee Rural Electric that where the subject matter is the existence of an easement or the placement of poles on someone's property without permission?
In 9 or 10 years that I've been on the board, no.
Do you know anyone named Joseph Haddock or Sylvia Haddock?
No.
If I told you that Mr. and Ms. Haddock owned this piece of property before it eventually came to Dayspring Health, would that help jog your memory?
No.
Can you tell me to the best of your ability what you believe the problem in this lawsuit is?
Back to the form. You can answer.
Do what, Dylan?
You can answer.
They believe that there are poles on their property. That's.
Do you believe that there's a factual dispute about whether the poles are on their property?
I don't know that.
Okay, you don't know whether the poles are on their property or not.
I don't know that.
Okay. You're on the board of directors, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you told me that it's Mr. Bennett is the CEO? Who is the CEO?
John Middleton.
Middleton, I'm sorry. Mr. Middleton is the CEO. Has John Middleton told the board of directors that there's a question about whether these poles are on the property of Dayspring?
He has not told the board.
Has he told you individually as a member of the board of directors that there's a question about whether the poles are actually on the property of Dayspring Health?
I found that out yesterday.
You found out yesterday?
Yesterday.
Can you tell me what you found out yesterday?
Now, at this point, if it's calling for information he learned in depot preparation with myself, I'll instruct him not to answer. Now, if it's factual information within your knowledge, then you can answer the question.
I learned it with him.
Okay. Don't want to know anything that your lawyer told you. Does that make sense?
Yes,
That's called attorney-client privilege.
okay.
But factual information that you may have gotten by looking at a survey or a map or a diagram or something like that, the information, that is just information. Does that make sense?
Kinda.
Do you know of any, so let me ask the question this way. Do you know of any survey or map or diagram or chart that indicates that the poles are located anywhere other than on the property of Dayspring Health?
I had not seen it.
You have not seen anything that says the poles are anywhere else except on the property of Dayspring?
I haven't seen anything.
You haven't seen any charts at all?
Nothing.
Okay. When Mr. Middleton briefed the board of directors about this lawsuit, did he indicate to you that there was any question about whether these poles were on the property of Dayspring Health?
He told us that Dayspring said that we had poles on our property.
Did he indicate to you that Dayspring Health had a survey that shows that the poles are on the property of Dayspring Health?
I was not aware of that.
I'm not sure I understand your answer, so let me tell you what I think you're trying to say. If I get it wrong, it's perfectly all right to tell me I got it wrong. I think you're saying that he didn't tell you that Dayspring Health had a survey, and he didn't tell you that the Department of Transportation had verified that the poles are on the property of Dayspring Health.
That's right.
Other than from the attorney who represents Okefenokee, have you received any information about the cost of relocating these poles from their current location?
No.
Do you know if such a cost estimate has been requested by any member of the board of directors?
We have not.
I'll tell you my experience of serving on a board of directors of entities. Most of them go through a process of developing a budget. Does Okefenokee go through the process of developing a budget each year?
Yes.
In the development of the budget of Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation, did you include in your budget any expense for the relocation of the poles that are believed to be on the property of Dayspring Health?
Not that I'm aware of.
Your attorney has given me some documents related to your particular deposition, so if you'll give me just a moment, I'm gonna take a look at them. Can you tell me if you know who Ernie Thomas is?
He works for the co-op.
I want to show you a document that your attorney has provided to me in connection with our taking of this deposition, and ask you if you've seen that before.
No, I have not. Not from the cover of it anyhow. No, I have not.
All right. I want to get this, have this item, this document, which is a memo from Ernie Thomas to John Middleton dated Friday, February 28, 2014, marked as the plaintiff's exhibit number 1 for this deposition. Now, I want to hand you this document, which is another memo from Ernie Thomas to John Middleton dated May 5th, 2015, and ask you if you will take a look at that.
No, sir, I have not.
In connection with the development of the budget for, let me just have first, I'm going to have this memo marked as the plaintiff's exhibit number 2. And then I'm going to ask you, I'm going to hand you these 2 exhibits that have been marked 1 and number 2. And if you look on the second page, I think you get a dollar amount, or an estimated dollar amount.
Taking on both of them?
Yep.
Okay.
And ask you in connection with your duties as a director of Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation and engaging in the budget process, do you recall any consideration of this budgetary expense in the preparation, or any consideration of this expense in the budget of Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation?
No, sir.
If I understand correctly, Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation is a corporation that is made up of members who use the utility service. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know if Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation has ever requested from either the plaintiff, Dayspring Health, the plaintiff's immediate predecessor entitled Douglas Adkins, or in the chain of title, the predecessor to Adkins, Joseph Haddock and Sylvia Haddock. Do you know if Okefenokee ever requested that any of them provide an easement to Okefenokee for the placement of poles on this particular piece of property?
I do not know.
Do you know of any incident or event where Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation put any poles or wire, cable or conduit in the wrong location, made a mistake?
I do not.
Do you know if there is any policy established by the Board of Directors of Okefenokee about how to correct problems if there is an error in the placement of poles, wire, cable, conduit, or any other facility owned by Okefenokee?
I'm not aware of it.
In your history as a resident of Nassau County who may have traveled US 1 going north from Hilliard to Georgia over the last 60 years, do you know of any danger or damage or adverse impacts that your power lines cause?
Not that I'm aware of.
You can answer.
I'm sorry.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I'm going to assume, but I got to ask you. I will assume that as a director of Okefenokee Rural Membership Corporation, you also consume the services. That is, they provide utility services to you personally. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that a condition of being a member of the board of directors?
No. Oh, yes. Yeah, you have to be a member.
You have to be a member to
Yes.
be on the board, and to be a member, you have to be a consumer of the services of the utility.
Yes.
I may just have a moment, please. Thank you. Just a few more questions. Can you tell me how frequently the Board of Directors of Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation meets?
Monthly.
Do you get when you have a monthly meeting, do you get a package from John Middleton or somebody in the office that tells you what is on the agenda
Yes.
for that meeting? In connection with your duties as a director and receiving these agendas, can you tell me if you as a director do anything else to become informed about the matters that affect Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation?
Specify.
Well, do you go out, let's just say that there's an issue relating to the cost of cable, and you're working on your budget, and so you want to allocate so many dollars for the repair and maintenance of electric transmission cable.
No.
You just take.
We don't prepare the budget. We approve the budget.
Right. And so my question is, as a director, do you go out and in this approval process, is it a rubber stamp, or do you actually look at the budget and the items on the budget to see if they are reasonable in the context of the duty that you have to approve that budget?
As far as our knowledge goes.
Okay. If I understand your response, you're saying, no, I don't do any individual homework to find out if the matters presented are accurate.
Yes.
If a matter is within your general knowledge because you can observe it, you bring that to the table for your performance of your duties as a director.
Say it again.
As a general practice, if something is within your personal knowledge, your range of experience, education, training, or whatever, you bring that to the table as a director in the decision-making process.
Yes.
From that perspective, driving up US 1, going to and from Charlton County, Georgia, Folkestone, or wherever, at this particular location and these particular power poles, did they look like they were on the right-of-way of US Highway 1 or did they look like they were over on the adjoining property?
I did not notice.
You didn't look at all,
No,
even after the lawsuit came up?
I did not. Can I specify something here that doesn't have anything to do with this? I live at Carroll's Corner.
Right.
108, 121.
Okay,
I go to Folkestone, I go 121 into Bloom.
okay.
I don't ever go by that thing. I'm telling you, it's not even once a month.
Right,
So, just to clarify, I go to Folkestone, not that way.
but that's not the way you go, but you might go that way once a month for some other reason.
Maybe,
Maybe.
yes. But no, I have not noticed.
In connection with Mr. Middleton and I assume the briefing he gave the board of directors, whether you call it a briefing or just sitting down saying, hey, we're getting sued, however it was you would characterize it, is not critical to this question. When he spoke to the board of directors about the lawsuit, did he tell the board of directors or share with the board of directors any information regarding the appraised value or the damages that the plaintiff, Dayspring Health LLC, would suffer if the encroachment of these poles continue?
No.
Let me just ask, have you had an executive session like with your normal general counsel about the case? Because those would be work product, but otherwise, if John was discussing something in an open board meeting, then yes, you can answer freely. But if you had a meeting with John and your lawyer and it was off the record, an executive session is what it's often called, then that's work product and I'll object. But if it was in an open board meeting, then you can answer.
No. I mean, apparently there's been no information conveyed. I want to shift your focus a little bit again generally. And this is a general question and it's not specific to Okefenokee at this time. Let's apply it personally to you as a farmer engaged in a business of agriculture. If my vehicle leaves the road and hits something on your property, do you believe that you have any liability or risk for any loss, injury, or damage that results?
Back to the phone. You can answer.
My fence gets tore up.
If that would be a loss or damage to you from the accident, correct?
Yes.
What about any loss or injury or damage to the driver or occupant of the vehicle?
Regarding to,
an accident?
whose fault?
Well, since the fence didn't jump out in the road, let's just say it's the driver was careless or something in the road caused them to have to leave the road.
I'm not getting the gist of this. I'm sorry. I'm not understanding, to tell you the truth.
That's fine. It's perfectly all right. If you don't understand the question, that's good enough. Do you believe that Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation has any liability for any loss or injury or damage that occurs if a motor vehicle collides with one of its poles?
Back to the form. You can answer.
I do not.
What if the pole is not where it is supposed to be?
Same objection. You can answer.
If it's not in the middle of the road, I don't have a problem.
Okay. Do you know if Okefenokee Rural Electric Membership Corporation has any plans to improve the property at the location of the power line at Dayspring Health LLC?
I do not.
I don't have any further questions.
I don't have any questions. He'll read if it's ordered.
Okay.
It will be ordered.
Okay.
So if you can, give the